The rescue of that American mother and her family, held hostage by the Taliban for 5 years.
The couple was first taken hostage in 2012 while on a backpacking trip that eventually led to Afghanistan. Pregnant at the time, Caitlan Coleman eventually gave birth to 3 children while living in captivity.
The Pakistan military conducted an operation in the border region between Pakistan and Afghanistan.
The family was finally freed by Pakistani forces last October.
Obviously, it will be of incredible importance to my family that we are able to build a secure sanctuary for our 3 surviving children.
But the transition to freedom has been rocky. Boyle was arrested by Ottawa police in December and faces multiple charges, including assault, sexual assault, unlawful confinement, and causing someone to take a noxious substance. A publication ban prevents media from reporting any details that might identify the victims or witnesses. Meanwhile, Caitlan Coleman is now living in an Ottawa apartment alone with her children.
I'm frustrated that so much of what happened to us, people don't view as something that I did so much as something that I was forced to do.
Host for The Fifth Estate, Habiba Nashin, and producer Kimberly Ivany caught up with her there.
Habiba, 5 years in captivity, now about 4 months back in Canada. How's Caitlan doing?
I mean, considering the fact that she has 3 young children and her husband was just arrested a couple of days before we met, and she's feeding a baby who, you know, life doesn't stop, right? She's feeding her baby. The other 2 kids are being 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds. It was chaos, and there were boxes everywhere. They had just moved in, and they're making this new place their home. Considering all that, I think she's holding up okay. But my God, I mean, as I say, it was chaos. And she's been through a lot, and there's also a lot of criticism that she's been on the receiving end of since she's returned about the couple's decision to go off to Afghanistan while she was pregnant. So I can imagine that hasn't been easy for her.
Absolutely. And Kimberly, as this interview is going on, it's just a few weeks ago now, what were you doing? What were you thinking?
Well, one of the things that really stands out in my mind are the events leading up to our meeting with her. We had it planned to go meet both Josh and Caitlan, but just hours before we were going to get on the plane to Ottawa, news broke that Josh had been arrested. So we're here at CBC saying, what do we do? Should we still go and try to talk to Caitlan? And we decided to. We flew to Ottawa, wrote Caitlan a message, and just asking, you know, are you still okay to go ahead as planned? And she said yes. So we went to her place the next morning, and it just really hit me how willing she was to speak with us in the midst of all that chaos. Mm-hmm. So she's just moved, her husband's now in custody, and also pretty much every news outlet in North America also wants to talk to her when we were there.
Yeah, absolutely. They want to report on it. But now here's the challenge is around reporting. There is a publication ban because of these charges against Josh, against essentially around what you can say, what you can reveal about witnesses and potential victims. So how do you deal with that as you're telling this story?
It's really tricky to have the central subject of your investigation be under a publication ban or the events around him. You know, it's tricky because our job as journalists to provide the public with the information that you know they want. This would be that, but we also then have to balance the legal limitations of what we do, and So we were able to report things out, but in the end, we have to make a decision about where can we give information about and where we have to hold back. And in our case, we were just transparent and said, look, we know you want to know more, and we can't tell you that because of the publication ban. And to me, it was striking because I've worked in the U.S. for the last decade, and that doesn't happen here. You don't have
publication bans in
absolutely
America,
not.
Yeah.
You do not tell the American media what they can and cannot report on. So this is an interesting concept that we have in Canada, and it's taken some time for me to get adjusted to.
They're really to protect the victims.
Exactly.
That's the intent.
Exactly,
yeah.
And you get it. You're like, oh, and especially in this case, it's alleged victim, so it's possible that the process hasn't
taken place.
Hasn't taken place.
Yeah.
So, and it's to protect, especially victims of assault who may not want to be out there for the rest of their lives, being associated with those acts. So, I get it. but as journalists, it's just really tricky to kind of navigate that world.
Yeah, as you're sort of skirting that fine line with the public's right to know against the legislation. But the public, I think, is just so fascinated by these kids who were born in captivity. What are they like, Kimberly?
Yeah, so the morning when we were interviewing Caitlan, I was in a room nearby with Caitlan's 2 young sons. And you wouldn't be able to tell the story behind them because they're just like any other toddler you would meet. They're just opening games on the floor and throwing pieces everywhere and just laughing at what they're doing and picking their nose and eating their boogers, just like things that you would, things that are just normal, right?
Yep.
And there was another point as well when I took little baby Grace, Caitlan's daughter. She was getting a little bit fussy on Caitlan's lap. And I was just holding her, just so in awe of this baby I'm holding, just thinking, what have you come from? What have you seen? And I just so wished in that moment I could interview each one of them just on what life has been like so far.
And one thing that's interesting to me when we asked Caitlan how they're adjusting, and she said, you know, what the kids understood when they were being held hostage, they would describe as bandy world. So in their mind, bandy is the Pashtun word for prisoner. They were prisoners. And now that they're no longer being held hostage, they describe their new world as no bandy. So they would go around and be like, Mom, you know, when we were bandy, we didn't have orange juice, but now we have orange juice. So it's just to think about 3- and 4-year-olds who have to make sense of that world and that reality, to me, is just, it's striking.
It's phenomenal. Quite something. Kimberly Habiba, thanks so much.
Thank you, Dave.